Back to our board meeting, and here we're here at MBN. So Brian, glad you brought your whole team here, and turn it over to you. I think you're going to do about a 45-minute presentation, and then there'll be Q&A from.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Take it away, Brian.
Well, we appreciate you coming to visit us today to learn more about MBN and also to help us celebrate Al-Hurra's 10-year anniversary. The men and women of MBN are very proud of what they've been able to accomplish over the last 10 years. But we also realize we operate in a very dynamic marketplace, and we continue to find new ways to reach and impact our audience. After I provide a short overview of MBN, I'll introduce you to selected members of our team who on a daily basis produce and present our TV, radio, and digital products. Well, to start with, MBN is a multimedia organization. It consists of Al-Hurra TV, Al-Hurra Iraq TV, Radio Sawa, Radio Alpha Darfur, and our various digital properties. MBN's mission is to provide objective, accurate, relevant information on the Middle East, the world, and the United States. In doing so, we support democratic values and freedom of expression by expanding the spectrum of ideas and perspective in the region's media. MBN is a hybrid of the traditional surrogate mission of reporting on news from the region, as well as presenting U.S. foreign policy and American values. In reading Undersecretary Stengel's message to the public diplomacy community last week, I was struck with a point he also made earlier this morning. It is important to our strategic interest that our audience understand our foreign policy, even if they don't always agree with it. That's part of MBN's mission every day, to help the people in the Middle East understand foreign policy. MBN operates in a very challenging environment. As we've already heard this morning, in most Middle East countries, the U.S.'s standing is at an all-time low. Almost daily, in many countries, local media attacks U.S. policy and distort American values. In addition to a strong anti-American sentiment, Freedom House's most recent report on press freedom showed that the Middle East is at the bottom of the list. Not one country is ranked in the free category. Traditional media in much of the region is constrained by emergency rule, state ownership, self-censorship, and laws against insulting public figures. Hardly a day goes by without a new example where a journalist or a blogger is attacked, harassed, arrested, or in too many instances killed. The media environment is also highly competitive. There are reportedly over 600 Arab satellite TV channels. However, more channels doesn't make for better journalism. Many stations remain under state control or either funded or supported by political or sectarian interest. In addition, over the last 10 years, a large number of new international broadcasters have also launched Arab language channels. BBC, France 24, Russia Today, and China TV are just a few examples. It's important to note that each one of these countries has decided it was in their interest to have a direct voice in the region. We believe here that direct broadcasting is one of the few ways the U.S. can communicate information and ideas directly to the people of the Middle East and North Africa in an unfiltered way. So what is MBN's programming strategy? In this competitive environment, MBN is working with a pan-Arab multimedia programming strategy. We must address a large and diverse region consisting of 22 countries over a large geographic area with a population of over 350 million people that have pronounced religious, cultural, and in some cases linguistic differences. So MBN's strategy is to ensure that the people in this large region have direct access to accurate news, varying perspectives, presentation of foreign policy, and a forum to exchange new ideas. We'll start this morning by showing the role that news and current affairs plays in Al-Hurra's strategy. As a 24-hour-a-day news and information channel, newscasts and coverage of breaking news provide the framework of Al-Hurra's programming day. News programming lays the foundation for the balance and objectivity that our audience expects from Al-Hurra. Let's play this short little video that shows how news and current affairs fits into the Al Hurra programming strategy.
As the sun rises, Al Hurra's team of correspondents throughout the Middle East and North Africa are gathering news for its 2-hour-long primetime newscast, top and bottom of the hour news updates, covering breaking news as it happens. Al Hurra's extensive coverage of the revolutions in Egypt over the past 3 years has been a testament to our informed and courageous team on the ground. When bomb blasts rocked Lebanon, we were on the scene, getting reaction from the streets. And when voters go to the polls, we are there, providing extensive coverage of elections from Iraq to Morocco.
I think that what's happening in Syria...
Al Hurra doesn't only report on the Middle East. It is the only Arabic language network with dedicated correspondents at the White House, State Department, Congress, and the Pentagon. Al Hurra carries live events relevant to our audience, including President Obama's speech at the National Prayer Breakfast earlier this month.
Therefore, believe in the inherent dignity of every human being, dignity that no earthly power can take away. And central to that dignity is freedom of religion, the right of every person to practice their faith how they choose.
Our recent coverage of the State of the Union address demonstrates American democracy in action, interviewing members from both sides of the aisle.
Work out some diplomatic solutions with Iran, maybe we can engage them on Syria.
In addition to event-driven news and U.S. foreign policy, Al Hurra's newscasts highlight the U.S. democratic experience, human and civil rights, and American values. It is not only important what we cover, but how we cover it.
Salam, peace to all.
Al Hurra goes beyond the headlines. After the evening newscast, the free hour connects via satellite links guests throughout the region and experts from America to discuss the main news story of the day, giving viewers a broader perspective. Al Hurra's All Directions provides a weekly roundup of U.S. foreign policy towards the Middle East, featuring specialists from U.S. think tanks that debate the U.S. role and impact in the region.
The importance about an election that is run freely and fairly.
Adhering to high journalistic standards, Al Hurra strives to present all sides of the story. Accuracy, objectivity, and balance. News coverage the viewer needs.
Now, to give you a better sense of how Al Hurra covers foreign affairs, I'd like to introduce to you Michel Gondor, Al Hurra's State Department correspondent and also host on several of our current affairs shows that discuss foreign policy. Michel.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. I've been covering the State Department since 2004. My job is to highlight U.S. policy regarding international and regional events and presenting it to our viewers in a simple way. I do that through participating in daily press briefings and interviews with State Department officials. Our interviews with Secretaries Rice and Clinton generated a lot of interest in the region, with many media outlets reprinting quotes. As a member of the press corps, I've traveled with the Secretaries of State to the Middle East and Europe, covering meetings and conferences related to the region. A couple of weeks ago, I accompanied Secretary Kerry to Geneva II talks in Switzerland and the International Economic Forum in Davos, where we were able to update our viewers on the latest news, the Secretary's meetings, the U.S. position and reactions towards Syria's events. During his concluding press conference, Al Hurra's name came up one more time when we were given the opportunity to ask Secretary Kerry a question which was broadcast live worldwide. In addition to reporting from the State Department, once a week I host the daily political talk show, Free Hour. Although newscasts are event-driven, Free Hour lets us set the agenda and provide extra emphasis and analysis to the most important topics of the day. We host newsmakers, analysts, journalists from all over the world, including government officials, political figures, and diplomatic figures. And in fact, we had the opportunity to host Ambassador Crocker days before he left Baghdad as US Ambassador to Iraq in 2009. We inform our viewers by showing all the angles of the picture. We don't leave any stone unturned. We engage with them through social media, and we provide them the outlet to express their opinions and ask questions. 2 weeks ago, I hosted a program on the latest round of Geneva talks. The guests included a Syrian member of parliament, the Syrian National Coalition ambassador to France, a Russian political analyst, and an American expert on Syrian affairs. The panel debated whether the US and Russia should have resolved their differences on the future of Syria before convening in Geneva, and the pros and cons of the partition of Syria to achieve a ceasefire. The discussion reflected the views of participants and the neutrality and the plurality of the program. In addition to political talk shows, we had dedicated program on social issues, and this video will give you a better idea.
Al-Hurra sheds a light on the most important issues, challenging freedom and democracy in the Middle East and North Africa. Programs such Eye on Democracy, Women's Views, Gulf Talks, and Stories with Akram Khuzam are dedicated to highlight issues such as political reform, human rights, including the rights of women, religious freedom, and the freedom of the press, through reports and in-depth interviews. Opposition members and activists turn to Al-Hurra to tell their stories without the threat of government interference. These programs examine stories such as the fate of political activists held in prison for their beliefs, female Syrian refugees that are forced into marriage to feed their families, the reasons behind the emergence of the Salafi movements in Sudan, the Algerian government's crackdown on private media outlets, and social media activists in Bahrain sent to prison for insulting the king on Twitter. Al-Hurra is clear in its mission and continues to tell stories and addresses topics that are not regularly heard in the Arab media.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Michelle. As I said in my introduction, Al-Hurra follows a pan-Arab strategy. But within that strategy, we have developed some individual programs that attempt to maximize their impact in specific key countries. Fran Myers has created several of these shows, and I'll let her tell you her strategy. Fran.
Thank you, Brian, and hello, everybody. So why did we create Al-Yom, which is our big show? Al-Yom was created to enhance Al-Hurra's ability to connect with the viewer. If you go back, we had external critics who complained that the network was static, that we weren't relevant enough, that we were produced too heavily right here in Springfield, and that we were not having a feel or a connection. So Al-Yom was specifically designed to flip that reality right on its face. So what did we do? We created a new dynamic format. We built fresh, beautiful sets, and we put them in the perfect locations in the Middle East. We hired young, smart, and good-looking anchors and presented topics that are easy to digest and then heavily engage with the viewer. Now, Al-Hurra had a new approach so that it could sell its news, its information, and its mission. And the strategy worked. Al Hurra was therefore greeted with its huge amount of positive media about this new show, about its look, about its format. National surveys and a focus group show that up to 75% of all Al Hurra viewers who watch Al Yom once return every single week to watch it again, which is a huge television story. Let's take a look. Al Yom. Al Yom's daily live 3-hour news magazine with studios in Cairo, Jerusalem, Beirut, Dubai, and Washington, D.C., and its next day morning repeat represents nearly 20% of the entire programming grid. In Cairo, Al Hurra is the only network, local or foreign, that broadcasts full shows from our studio right on the Nile. A spectacular view and critical location around the corner from Tahrir Square. At the same time, Al Yom is the only show with a live studio and host broadcasting 5 days a week from Jerusalem to the rest of the Arab world. We cover the entire Gulf from our Dubai studio, and our Beirut studio covers the Levant, including Syria. We are in high-profile places that matter, and the people know we are there, offering a unique viewer experience. Al Yom's powerful format showcases our anchors, appealing to local audiences while having a pan-regional reach. The viewers connect with the local anchors as one of their own. While watching custom and original features, impactful stories such as the marriage of 2 Syrian refugees in a Lebanese refugee camp. Al Yom sets the agenda every day, making sure the right guests, the right stories, and the right angles are in place every single show. Another part of that agenda is the Americas franchise. That features our American culture, showing our diversity and our tolerance for all people. Al Yom has fully integrated social media with our hip young segment B-Link and live tweets throughout the 3 hours, uploading hundreds of original branded features to YouTube and reaching over 10 million views. And then there is Facebook Al Yom, engaging and connecting with over 1 million fans. Al Yom, the big show that makes the big difference. And adding to the success of Al Yom is Rahin Alafin, which is our new Egyptian show, and that means where do we go from here? This show is all about the youth. And like the characters in the show, they're all trying to figure out where their lives are taking them since the Egyptian Revolution. Rahin Alafin features a diverse young cast that mirrors the Egyptian society. Christian, Muslim, Salafist, rich, poor, educated or not, men, women, all openly discussing religion, tolerance, chaos of the government, lack of jobs, education, marriage, women's rights, and what each one wants for the future. No scripts. A first-of-its-kind program. Rahin Alafin has received a lot of media attention. We placed it on popular Egyptian network Al Hayat, increasing both distribution and viewership for the show. Over 6 million additional viewers watched Season 1 on Al Hayat, verified by the Pan-Arab Research Center. And some more good news about Rahin Alafin. When Governor Mihand and President Conniff and I were in Egypt in December for the launch and the press conference of Rahin Al Lafine. We had a private meeting with the general manager of Al Hayat, who had told us that due to the success of season 1, he intends to air season 2. So once again, we're going to get more distribution, more viewers, and more mission at relatively no cost. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you, Fran. As I said in the introduction, the main Al Hurra strategy is a pan-Arab strategy. However, in 2004, Congress created a separate Al Hurra channel for Iraq in order to maximize impact in an important country. This short video will give you an idea of the kind of impact a local channel can have.
Al Hurra Iraq was launched in 2004 in the wake of the Iraq War to provide Iraqi citizens with reliable and unbiased news and information to help serve them in developing the foundation for a democratic society. Our dedicated team of journalists across the country and in Springfield, Virginia, produce Iraq-specific programs, including a daily primetime newscast, discussion programs, and shows that feature the best of Iraqi culture and society. Since Al Hurra Iraq is a local indigenous TV channel, the 24/7 programming resonates with the viewers by fulfilling a void in their media landscape. We cover local events throughout the country with a strong commitment towards providing a voice to the men and women on the street. We also provide timely, relevant, and thorough coverage of current affairs issues, thereby capturing the pulse of the people. Al Hurra Iraq sponsors election candidate debates, conducts investigative reporting, and presents round-the-clock news, all in the tradition of the free press. The Iraq Today program is widely regarded as a newscast of record and is watched by millions nightly. In addition, it provides access to minorities, women, and youth that is not available to them from other broadcasters. Al Hurra Iraq covers not just Baghdad, but has 21 correspondents throughout the country who report from all segments of society. During the recent turmoil in Anbar province, our correspondent Omar Al-Ubaidi was one of the few reporting from this troubled and dangerous region. We don't just cover the news, but we go beyond. Our recent co-production with U.S. Institute of Peace, Salam Shabab, follows a group of diverse Iraqi teens as they work together and compete in a series of challenges for a common purpose: to become ambassadors of peace. Al Hurra Iraq, a local channel with a broad appeal, represents Iraqi programming for an Iraqi audience.
We've spent most of the morning talking about TV, but I don't want to ignore and neglect the role that radio continues to play in the region. I'd like to introduce Maha Rabia, Radio Sawa's managing editor, who will describe Radio Sawa's format and strategy. Maha.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. Radio Sawa was created in 2002 to reach young adults in the Arab world. This audience was not interested in listening to much news. They wanted to be informed, but in a different way. Radio Sawa format of mixing Arabic and Western music with news in short, digestible bites appealed to this demographic. And this way, Sawa responded to the way these people listen to radio these days. As a result, Sawa has been able to attract a significant portion of the youth population. Currently, Radio Sawa signal is broadcast across 42 FM and 4 medium wave transmitters throughout the Middle East and North Africa. However, Radio Sawa is not just one radio station. It is 7 different streams tailored musically to the tastes and culture of 7 different regions. Our listeners may come for the music, but they do stay for the news. SAWA provides 6 hours of news a day. We have 2 newscasts per hour, 24/7, and those newscasts range in length from 5 to 15 minutes. We also created feature programs that provide a different emphasis and a more in-depth look at mission-oriented topics, like entrepreneurship in the Arab world, the plight of Syrian refugees, and rights of citizens and journalists in Egypt. SAWA transitions easily to cover breaking news. We break to broadcast events such as Secretary Kerry's at Geneva II conference on Syria, the last month's State of the Union address, and breaking news wherever that may happen, in Tahrir Square, in Libya, or wherever we can report from. We also, all of this could not be happened without our team of broadcasters here in the United States and about 60 correspondents throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. And Radio SAWA broadcasting is often picked up by local media, especially when it has something to do with the Middle East. We conducted an interview with Senator McCain that was picked up with many outlets in Egypt because it was about U.S. military aid to Egypt. And audiences who are loyal to Radio SAWA say that our broadcasts increase their knowledge of the U.S. and of current affairs. Our research also shows that they stay tuned when the news comes on. For example, in Morocco, 61% say that they stay tuned and they listen with interest to our newscasts. However, having said that, SAWA does face challenges. And one of the challenges that SAWA faces is the rapid growth and saturation of the radio marketplace. To counter this, we try to sound more local and be more interactive. Recent events in the Middle East have given SAWA opportunities for growth, let's say. We added 3 different transmitters in Libya, and we are embarking on launching another transmitter in Mauritania in the spring. And we keep asking governments for more permits to build more transmitters and to get licenses for those in the countries where we do not have transmitters. We're also looking into possibilities of syndicating SAWA content on local stations. However, we found there is more interest in the music rather than the news, but we keep trying. We're also working with the Voice of America to blend our Arabic news content with their Africa FMs. One thing we have not touched upon is Afia Darfur. Afia Darfur is a standalone program that brings news and information to Arabic-speaking audiences in Darfur and in refugee camps in eastern Chad. Let's watch. This daily 30-minute newscast on shortwave radio provides information that is not accessible through the official media, such as reports on humanitarian aid, peace talks, and refugee conditions. Afia Darfur delves into topics that impact the lives of the refugees, such as food shortage and the lack of water in Darfur, and how prosecutors are given no power to prosecute criminals. We share one such story with you.
4 men of Al-Hawazma tribe joined the Sudanese government army to fight justice and equality rebel group, and they were captured. A few days later, the leader of Al-Hawazma tribe called into Afia Darfur to explain that these people are fighting just for money and they don't have anything to do with politics. A week later, the spokesperson of Justice and Equality Movement called Afia Darfur to say he heard the report and he would take that into consideration. A week later, the tribesmen were released. The representative of the Sudanese government said after the breakdown of Ad-Doha peace talk that could never happen without Afia Darfur.
Continuing to make a difference in the lives of Darfurians, Afia Darfur. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Maha. Digital media is fast becoming a critical way for us to reach an important segment of our population. Last year, MBN created a new digital media department. I'd like to introduce Davin Hutchinson, we call him Hutch, who will explain and describe our digital media strategy. Hutch.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Board. What is MBN Digital? Plainly spoken, it's the original text articles, the breaking radio reports from our colleagues, the video reports and video programming on the websites of alhura.com and radiosawa.com. It's the 24-hour digital streams of all of the flavors of Sawa and of Alhura. And it's also the Alhura iPhone and Android app that we did with Rob and ODDI in the back. And all our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. That's what we call MBN Digital. Through these properties, we reach millions of Arabs, mostly under the age of 30, every month. And thousands engage with us every day, meaning like, comment, or share on our stories, primarily on Facebook. In the past year, we've learned a lot about the behavior of our audience in the Middle East. We haven't completely figured it out, obviously, but we continue to experiment with content every day, what we write about, how we write about it, to see how they behave. One thing we've learned this year is mobile-first internet is happening right now in the Gulf, not in 5 years. The vast majority of our audience who come to our websites are Facebook properties from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Qatar. They are on smartphones or they are on tablets, according to our own internal Google Analytics. Yet in Egypt and North Africa and Iraq, it's the desktop experience that is dominant. And we hope and we expect that this will change quickly as smartphones and feature phones become more widely available. We've learned that traffic, engagement, and impact happens when we write reports that ask deeper questions about social issues and then open up our platforms for debate. We believe in providing what we call news that listens. And by that I mean, if you read the headlines on our websites, you'll see a lot of questions, question marks, calls to actions, asking people to comment about daily news events. And these actually work much better for us than reporting straight news in terms of what audiences respond to. These articles about deep social questions can create viral stories for us, and we've done this several times. For example, we wrote a story about the fairness of the decision to strip citizenship rights away from Bahrainis who protest against the government. And we had a headline phrased in a question with Sharik Baraik, which means share your opinion, and a poll. Well, after a couple days, we got over 230,000 people who responded to this poll and almost 1 million visits, mostly on mobile phones from Bahrainis. And this isn't a one-off. We've done this on salaries versus cost of living in Saudi Arabia, the future of Western Sahara, and so on. We've also learned don't spam your Facebook users with a lot of content. You have to be selective. It's better to pick something that's on, one or two things that's on somebody's mind during a given day, and then try to foster a conversation around that. We have been primarily relying on Facebook throughout the region. Twitter has proved useful somewhat to us in the mobile areas, but we do use Facebook to start these conversations. Currently, our digital properties reach about 1.4 million people monthly, and that's a doubling of our website traffic in the last calendar year. 2014 is off to a strong start, again, because of viral stories that we're learning to get better at. And as far as our Facebook communities go, here's kind of how it's broken down. Rahin Al-Afain is about 428,000, Free Hour 527,000, Al-Yom just past 1 million, Radio Sawa about 3 million, and Al-Hura about 3.4 million. And of course there's some overlap there because people associate with multiple brands. We have learned about tough lessons this year, challenges that are ahead of us, and we have to be prepared for those. We've learned if we stop innovating, it's at our own peril. Right now we're working with ODDI on a Radio Sawa app. This is an audio-first app. Imagine mission-oriented news combined with your favorite on-demand radio streams. And the idea here is to kind of create a Trojan horse for a literacy-challenged area where the music plus the text articles and the on-demand podcast can reach people that you're not reaching right now. We've also realized that it's very difficult to keep up with changes in technology, so we have what we call knowledge shares. When somebody who's an expertise in Twitter or video production or in infographics can then share that with the team. And we do that across radio, television, and digital as well. I want to conclude with you guys on the notion of impact. It's very hard to measure impact, as you all know. It's easier with digital media because quantitatively, you can see things. This year we've had 477,000 individual comments responding to our stories, either on our websites or on Facebook. And qualitatively, you'll see a lot of response like this if you dig down into the comments regarding praise for our coverage in women's rights, tolerance, or free press, showing that we're really starting conversations. When we do write about freedom of expression, or write about American ingenuity, or racial tolerance, or gender equality, the great thing about digital media is people can talk back to you immediately in real time. And we do believe that this impact will increase because we believe that it's incumbent upon us. We have to learn to listen better. Thank you.
I know we're doing questions at the end. Can I ask a question
Sure.
now? Is that all right?
Yeah, you're the boss.
Here. Do you across? I know in Iran there's a firewall and there's censorship of new media. Anywhere else in where you guys are on the internet, do you find anybody restricting usage on mobile phones or tablets, or is it pretty open in most of the
Well, in
Arab
terms of
society?
access to certain websites, I would say the closest thing would be in Syria right now. I mean, it's in chaos. I was there in 2009, and everybody had sort of a software on their laptop to get through a wormhole because things were blocked. In the Gulf, that's often the case. They have free zones where you can access media, but outside of the free zones, certain things are blocked. Yeah. I think the biggest concern right now, though, is sort of the behavior and the example making you're seeing with governments, particularly in the Gulf, when people do comment against a ruler or a society or the economy on Twitter, for example, that they're made an example of and perhaps sent to prison for writing a poem on a tweet or something like that. So I think it's not as much technological as creating sort of an environment of fear where it's going to be harder.
So it's monitoring as opposed to restricting is what is the issue. Yeah.
And again, it's not monolithic.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, before turning to the rest of your questions,
I've got a bunch, yeah.
In closing, I'd like to say a few words about our audience, our impact, and our challenges. According to BBG research, MBN has an unduplicated audience of about 30 million viewers and listeners on a weekly basis. We have a separate TV audience of about 22 million viewers and a Radio Sawa audience of about 11 million listeners. This research also tells us something about the makeup, the composition of our audience. Our TV audience is generally male, over 35, that are interested in the news. They're news seekers. Our radio audience is younger, less than 35, more balanced between men and women, and their makeup prefers news in shorter newscasts. They don't watch long news channels. Our online audience is generally male, even younger, 24 years or less, is tech savvy, and has a high degree of education. So we believe our audience across our platforms represent a fairly good cross-section of society based on age, gender, and educational background. In terms of media preference, research also tells us that TV is the overwhelmingly dominant way people prefer to consume their news, with over 90% using TV as a way to gain their news and information. While radio is declining as a news source, still 50% of the audience in the Middle East consume news on the radio. And while online is increasing as a source of news, it still significantly trails radio and TV. But the online audience tends to be concentrated in the Gulf, where approximately 3/4 of the audience has access to the internet, whereas the rest of the Middle East, the number of people with access to the internet is much less, sometimes in the single digits. But just measuring and describing the audience isn't enough. We need to know, are we making an impact? Does it make a difference to the audience that they've watched our programming, listened to our programming? As you know, the BBG has been wrestling with this issue of impact for many years. In the past, we've had to use indirect indicators such as anecdotes or press citations, media pickup, and the like. But we need to continue to strive to find ways to more objectively measure impact. In the last go-round on our national survey questionnaires, we included several questions as an attempt to get a better handle on impact. And some of the preliminary results of these new questions has been very encouraging. On the questionnaires asking Al-Hurra watchers, they responded by saying that watching Al-Hurra, the content, helped them form opinions on important issues and increase their understanding of current affairs and democracy. So we've tried to put these questions into different categories to see what it all adds up to. We have reach, which is the number, and then we've come up with questions on engagement, questions that would indicate whether the programming has caught the interest of the respondent, and then added value. These are questions that try to gauge the audience's belief of whether they've learned something that they didn't know before after watching our program. So to illustrate some of these preliminary results, we're using Morocco as an example, and we found some interesting results for both Al-Hurra and Radio Sawa. For example, under engaging, we see that over 50% of the Al-Hurra and Radio Sawa audience say that what they learned from the channel inspired them to learn more about a particular issue. And also, under adding value in Morocco, we found that 75% of Sawa's audience say that listening to the station has helped their understanding of current affairs. And 67% of the Al-Hurra audience in Morocco say that watching the channel has increased their understanding of democracy. So these are just preliminary indications, but we believe may hold a better way to have stronger objective measures of impact than some of the elements and measures we've used in the past. We will continue to experiment with the next round of our country surveys to see if we can come up with questions that better gauge impact. So in closing, I'd like to say a few words about our challenges. Everything isn't rosy. Over the past 10 years, though, we have continually reassessed our programming. We've used technology and improved workflow to increase efficiencies. For example, the digital department that we're so proud of and Hutch talked about, we couldn't have imagined even the need for such a department 10 years ago. We built that department without any increase in our budget. We have funded it solely through reallocation internally of our resources. We do that frequently. Our environment is very dynamic. It has changed a lot over the last few years, and we continue to move things around, find different ways of doing business. But the ability to reallocate resources is now being felt with the budget cuts, as I know the board has been wrestling with these themselves, and it's a very difficult time. But it will seriously constrain our ability to respond to changing circumstances in the future. Our base has been cut for the first time, and it will have an effect on our era programming, and that is an unfortunate state of affairs that we all have to deal with. And we'll continue to find ways to adjust and adapt to changing circumstances, but it's going to be increasingly difficult. Also, another challenge, and it's been a theme throughout our presentation this morning, is that we use a pan-Arab programming strategy to address a large and diverse market of 22 countries across a vast area. Ideally, to maximize our impact, we would like to have separate channels, as we have successfully seen with Iraq, in places like Egypt, Syria, or the Maghreb. But once again, we realize that there are funding shortages. But that is a challenge in our programming strategy, a limiting factor. We also need to improve brand awareness. Our research tells us that in several of our key countries, a potential audience isn't sufficiently aware of Al-Hurra in this case and what it has to offer. As I said before, they have many choices. Our audience has over 600 channels, and to get them to add Al-Hurra into their bouquet of choices is an area we need to do a better job at. So in response, we are planning on creating a dedicated marketing and promotion office in the region that has the sole purpose to find ways to promote the brand pursue program placement opportunities on local domestic channels, and pursue co-production opportunities with appropriate partners. Our people are our most important asset. Almost every day, our overseas correspondents are at risk. As you know, Bashar Fahmy has been missing for 18 months in Syria. We need to find ways to protect our staff, but still cover the important stories required of us. And a final challenge is we need to retain, motivate, and attract talent in an era of declining resources. This is now, and will be even more so in the future, a formidable management challenge. So in closing, to bring us back to Al-Hurra's 10-year anniversary, I'd like to show a short video recaps Al-Hurra's first 10 years.
We have spent 10 years searching for the truth and shaping it into words to deliver accurate news. We have covered important events at varied locations and sometimes put our lives in danger to document moments that have changed history. Today, we continue our journalistic mission amongst hardships, but with hope and aspiration to be the place where people turn for objectivity. Al-Hurra, 10 years and counting.